over 3.5 million Iranian students either live in areas that do not have internet or do not own tablets and smartphones. In the dozens of areas that lack internet access, Iranian students are forced to drop out of school in the wake of school closures triggered by the Chinese coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. In mid-October, an 11-year-old Iranian schoolboy, Mohammad Mousavizadeh, committed suicide by hanging from the kitchen because he did not own a smartphone. Another 13-year-old schoolgirl from an impoverished family has committed suicide because she did not own a smartphone, preventing her from taking part in online classes. The share of education in government expenditure is 4.6% of GDP globally, but the Islamic authorities in Iran allocate just 2% for the education system. Israel spends the equivalent of 6% of its GDP on education, as some countries spend up to 10 or 12%. The precondition to social justice is educational justice, says chairman of the Islamic Consultative Assembly's Education Commission. According to the 2019 to 2020 budget draft that so-called moderate Hassan Rouhani submitted to the Islamic Consultative Assembly in late December, about $43 billion authorized the Khomeini's regime's overall defense outlays, leaving it at 7% of the state budget. Further, in January, Mullah the Great Ali Khamenei authorized the allocation of $200 million of additional budget to the IRGC Quds Force to counter the United States and all its allies throughout the globe. After 4 decades of misrule under the Islamic regime, Iranian education system is now one of the most primitive and backward in the world. In several Iranian provinces, there are no modern schools. These Iranian students are unable to learn in the technology-equipped classrooms that are so necessary for today's information society. Instead, many students across the country, particularly in remote areas, attend classes in tents or muds. There are thousands of tents and mud huts schools all across Iran, according to ICBPS. Now, however, with the coronavirus ravaging the nations, Iran's education system has been brought down to a point of near collapse. According to the most optimistic situation, 90% of schools in Iran, 31 provinces are experiencing crisis. Thousands upon thousands of classrooms don't have standard heating or air conditioning systems. And the tent and mud hut schools, of course, don't even have electricity. As with many other countries, Iran's schools have had to close in order to contain the spread of COVID-19, and students are told to take their classes remotely online. Yet, millions of Iranian students are unable to access their online courses. Most Iranian public schools are unable to run a remote learning network, and the regime's Ministry of Education is also unable to help with setting up online classes. Due to Iran's substandard internet infrastructure, along with a shortage of ministry staff who are qualified to administer such a program, even worse, millions of Iranians don't have high-speed internet in their homes and are unable to travel to an internet cafe on account of the pandemic-induced lockdown. In the 1980s, Iranian children were pulled out of schools by the regime to go fight the Iran-Iraq war. Those who survived, often with crippling injuries, were dubbed Iran's lost generation. Now Iran is at risk of creating another lost generation, of millions deprived of their right to knowledge and important training for life as a result of the regime's monumental mishandling of COVID-19.